Today we're going to talk about Joomla and SEO and just kind of sort of where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And a little bit about me. Steven Johnson, live here in Atlanta, married, have a couple kids, and been working with websites since early 2000s. And kind of got into it building affiliate sites. We did like iPhone speaker, well, at that time it didn't exist, but like TV reviews, different things like that. And so of course I wanted my sites to be at the top of the search engines. So started figuring out some of the SEO stuff. And I actually ran by here a couple weekends ago, just finished my first marathon, which went through Atlanta, so it was good. So when we came through, I was like, hey, that's where we're going to have the meeting. So I didn't stop. I kept going. And a few things that we'll just kind of talk about, some assumptions, just sort of how I approach it, because everyone's got different philosophies. I usually go, if you have like a user experience or another goal like keyword density or something else, I always try to lean towards a better user experience. What's going to sell people on the page? What's going to get them what you're really trying to accomplish? So the ultimate card, I usually user experience just trumps it. Also with extensions, I know Joomla is open source, but there are a lot of paid extensions. I generally like paid extensions because that means they're going to be better supported. And the price on all these is none of them are super expensive, but if there's a problem, I mean, I bill my time at a higher rate than the majority of these extensions cost, so it's a good use of money right there. Another thing with SEO, a lot of it is detail-oriented. These are things that the search engines pay attention to, not humans. So it's a lot of details, it's a lot of kind of boring, sometimes monotonous stuff, but it's just getting things in the right places so your sites will rank higher. And then another thing that really helps is you want to be organized. So you know what worked this year versus what works next year. And so you can kind of keep up with the history of everything. So, and when we look at the SEO building blocks, kind of break it into two sections. You have all your on-page factors, which are things that you can control. Keywords, page speed, sitemap, stuff with inside of Joomla. Then the other part is off-page factors. Those are like who's linking to you, where's the server physically located, how's Google ranking stuff with personalization, things like that. So today we're really going to be covering just the on-page factors. And with all those are just industries into themselves. And same with SEO. We're just going to kind of hit some of the high levels. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop me. And I'll tell you what I know, and we'll focus on the things that we can control. We'll talk about the SEO extensions, stuff that you can add to Joomla that will help SEO, and then have a couple real-world examples of where we improve things. The first, here are all our on-page factors: the URLs, metadata, page content. There are internal links as well as links out to other sites, a sitemap, and then the last one is how fast do your pages load. Those are all things that you can control to help your site rank better. And so the first one we're going to talk about are the SEF URLs. And most people are familiar with the URL. These are just some of the parts of them. And really you can see that you have the domain, and then as the URL goes on, it just gets more and more descriptive. And with the URLs, your most important words you want to try to keep first. And you want these to be human readable. So if you see the top level is human readable, the bottom level is this ampersand, product equals everything. So when Joomla starts out, it has one of these bad, or I call them ugly URLs. That doesn't mean anything to anyone, You just kind of see it and you copy and paste and you're like, is this going to break when I try to put it into an email to send to somebody? So really, Joomla doesn't do such a good job. There's a lot of technical reasons why they have that, but for SEO purposes, that's not so hot. You can also have multiple ways to access the same page. So Google might think product equals 42 is a different page than product equals 96, but really those two things, it's the exact same content that's being presented. So now Google has two pages with the same information, and they don't know which one is correct. And it cannot just be just one or two, but you could have dozens or hundreds. And so getting the SEF URLs in place makes it easier to work with. And then also the last thing is that gobbledygook just doesn't look that professional or slick. And you can't put that on if you're doing a postcard or a flyer or something like that. You can't, no one's going to remember that. But they will remember in-town coffee / coffee subscription. So it's much cleaner, and these are human readable. It's easier to share, and they just generally just look better. So some of the ways to get the SEF URLs, Joomla has URLs you can install by the core that will clean them up some, and then there's several different extensions. SEF Advanced, Joom SEF, and then SH404. They all have varying degrees of complexity, and the one that I work with and use the most is SH404, and it's also probably the most complicated, but it gives you the most control. At least it works the best for me. If you wanted to turn the core Joomla URLs on, you would go into the system, global configuration, site, and then the SEO settings. And that's where you can turn it on, and then it'll take it from the junky URLs to the good-looking URLs. And it doesn't give you complete control, but it gives you something which is better than nothing. And then another way is if you do install SH404, you can see that they have SEO, social SEO, analytics, all kinds of everything. And one of the reasons that I really like SH404 or third party is the URLs change from Joomla 1.0 to 1.5 to 2.5. When you go with one of these third party components, like my coffee subscription example, that URL will always remain coffee subscription regardless of what the junky URL is behind it. So with SH404 and the other ones, I can keep the same URLs when I switch from version to version. And that's really important because the URL is sort of like your history or credit with Google. And the longer the URLs are out there, the easier it will be for them to rank. And so, because Google trusts them, otherwise people would spam, or what, you could just create a new page and it would just jump right to the top. So if you should really be at the top, you don't want all these spammy sites just beating you up and passing you. So keeping the same URL from version to version is really important. And so when we look at those, the other thing that you want to look at when you're doing your URL structure is just try to follow some best practices. Human readable, again, the shorter the better. And if you can use punctuation in it, that's better, because we just did this like rat, time, egg. It kind of all runs together with those double letters, but when you put the hyphens, it makes it much easier and helps to just decipher the words that are there. And when you're planning out your URL structures, I usually will start with the site, and figure out what, I'll just sit and look at it, maybe write it down on a piece of paper, like, all right, I have all my top level pages. Now I have all my sections, or services type pages. Then I have all of my products type pages, or my staff type pages, and I'll kind of group those and try to come up with a nice, clean way so that I can set all my it says like in-town coffee /staff /Stephen Johnson. So that way you have a nice feel to it, and you know when you just by looking at the URL what the pages should be. And that's where the core Joomla SEO and then especially SH404 allow you to control there. And here is one example of a client that I had that was actually earlier this year, and just show you an example of how bad URLs or not using SEF URLs can make a difference. And so these guys came to me, I don't know, Christmas time, maybe a little bit after, and their site was just really dropping in the rankings. The phone wasn't ringing the way it was, and they had called and said, oh, every person we want to talk to keeps saying that we need to build a new website and get started over again. And I looked at it and said, well, if we can just clean some of this stuff up, we can improve it. So right around November sometime, somebody, this was before I worked with them, made some sort of change, and you can just see the number of URLs that Google has indexed really spiked way up. So now it's a site that probably has 40, maybe 50 real pages of actual content. Google now believe that it had almost, well, over 1,000 pages, which isn't accurate, so like 10 to 1. So Google has 10 pages and they don't really know which one to select, what's good, what's bad, and so they had a lot of what they call duplicate content issues. So around the Mark II, we installed SH404, and so that took all of these URLs that were duplicates, so product equals 45, product equals 46, product equals 47. It wrapped all those into one URL that would be coffee subscription, or whatever the example is. And so now, there's only one way to view the page. You don't have multiple ways to view the same content. And so we installed that, and it took a lot of hours looking at all the 404s, and just with all these things that were, say, 5 ways to access the same page, I would just kind of keep pointing all those duplicate ways to get to that, to that same URL. And so with doing that, it really reduced the amount of duplicate URLs, and everything also with Google takes time. So like within a month or so, we had started dropping from 1,200 back down to a more accurate number of URLs. And right up there is Victor Drover, and this is his product, SH404. And I was just showing him that I had a client that wasn't doing so hot. Somebody made some sort of change. Now they had a whole bunch of duplicate URL issues. They came to us, we installed SH404, and really got their Google index back in shape. And
lower than when they started, it seems.
Yeah,
What they do to kick off the problem? Like, did you ever?
I don't know. This was before they called me. I saw like a lot of references to like WordPress sites. And I think they had several different people that kept designing them new sites and trying to start over, and they would never keep that history of URLs together. So I'm not really sure what, something happened. I don't know what. Maybe they moved up to version 3, but it was just kind of a mess. And so with SH404, it grouped them all back and cleaned up their Google index. And then the good result, which really mattered to them, was the search engine results. All these graphs I'm getting out of Webmaster Tools, which if you aren't using those on your sites, they give you such great insight into what Google sees and thinks about your site. So again, something bad happened that I put these dates so they match with the other slide, and their results were just so-so. I couldn't go back any farther in Webmaster Tools, so I don't know what their index, the search engine results were before, but you can see around 2 where we installed it, give it a little bit of time, and then now their rankings are coming back up again. We have made a few other adjustments to the site, but I would say the biggest thing that we've done right here is just the addition of SH404 and cleaning up a little bit of the metadata on some of the key pages. Yeah.
Not doing the content or inbound or on-page or off-page stuff?
No, nuh-uh. It's a smaller company. They don't really have a whole lot of money. In fact, we're only doing, it's just, it takes time and effort. So we're just doing that. But right now, it's just, let's start with the basics of what we can control. Let's get the URLs in good shape. And one other thing I did do is that they had previous developers that created multiple menu systems. So again, it was a lot of different ways to get to the same content. And I did go through and clean all their menu systems up. So that was one other thing. But those are really the two primary things that have been done at this point. Then this is all organic traffic. There's no paid advertising, no buying links or advertising on other forums. But this is all just primarily SH404 fixes right there.
Do you think cleaning up the menus would have been necessary?
Not necessarily, but just.
I prefer to do it too, but.
Yeah, I think because we would just see all the URLs, and there were so many pages that were just repeating themselves, multiple ways to get to the same content, and the menus helped just from logically. I could kind of understand what was going on with the site and get my head around it. But anyway, so that was just the URLs, cleaning that up. The next big area you want to take on is the metadata. And
So content clusters, you're basically creating categories, putting pages in those categories, and that creates that URL that's got.
Right,
Okay.
And we're going to have to, there's so much, I could give a talk on just SH404, just URLs. But the other, I'm sure the other extensions are great. I like to standardize on one thing. So I use that on all my sites personally, all my client sites. So I don't know it as well as Victor, but I know SH404 really pretty well and can get it to do the things that help me out. Okay, so moving to the next one with the metadata. This is like, just imagine if you went to a bookstore and you saw every single book with the exact same page title on it. That's not really that helpful, and so a lot of websites have the exact same page title for all of the pages. And so metadata is pretty much comprised of three main things. You have your page title, which will generally show in the Google results. Also in Firefox, it'll show at the top of the browser. In Chrome, it doesn't really show. This really won't really show for the end user, except in kind of some of these obscure places. The next big one is you have the meta description, which is let's say the page title will probably be at most 60 characters long. The meta description is a little bit longer, maybe 150 or so characters, and that gives a little bit longer description. And then the last one are keywords, and so we'll go through each one of those a little bit more. With the page title and description, this is what it looks like in the code. So search engines can see this. So if you see meta name, description, Joomla hosting reviews will help make the best Joomla web hosting decision. The page title here is Joomla hosting reviews 2013, the best Joomla host. I've also put in with that, those are all keywords that I want to rank for. With this site, I want to rank for the words Joomla hosting. I want people to know it's relevant to whatever year it is, and then what it is, and what the page is about. And the reason those are important is because now Google knows what the page is about and has a much better idea of what you're trying to convey. And both the page title and the description will show in the Google results. It doesn't always do that. They really have gotten pretty good about being able to display those elements there. So you want to work with the metadata to keep up with it. And this now means you have a lot more stuff to keep up. You don't have to just make the page look good. You don't have to have good content. But now you're concerned about what the search engines think of you. And so that can be kind of tricky. So the last one is the keywords. And these have pretty much just been abused throughout history. So I don't even really mess with the keywords. Maybe sometimes if I have a client that really wants to, I'll put 3 or 4 of them in. But there are some obscure uses for them, but it's not, you know, when you're looking at time versus reward or effort versus reward, there's not really any value in spending time on keywords. So when it comes to the metadata creation, the way I see it, there are two ways you can go about it. You can do it automatically, and there's several extensions that will scan your page and create the metadata for you, or you can go in and do it by hand. And I opt to always just do it by hand. I think when I was researching, some of the extensions have gotten better, but a computer just can't write the stuff as well as a human can. And but with doing it by hand, you now have to kind of sit and think, what do I want the page title to be? What are my keywords? So it's really time intensive. You're looking to see what are your competitors, how are they writing their metadata, and it's part art and part science, you know, because you want to get your keywords in there, but at the same time it needs to be kind of catchy, and when it shows up in the results, you want it to trigger with the person, like make it look like, oh, this is a good site, I want to click it there. So if I just were to write hosting 27 times, people are going to look at it and say, oh, that's a junky site, you know, but if I can take the time with the metadata to get it in, then it's going to be more clickable. And some of the extensions, there's Tag Meta, SEO Simple, and then another big one is Joomla SEO. And all of those will help you create and automatically create your URL, or your metadata rather. Like I mentioned, I usually just do it by hand. And this is, after the presentation, I'll share out one of these files. And this is kind of just a system that I've developed over the years of how I keep up with it all. The first column, I have what the page is about. So again, we're here on the Joomla hosting. So I have like the home page. Then I have my next section, which is about, contact, sources, submit, and top level type stuff. And then I have like a top pick section. So I couldn't show it all, but I have this multiple sheets with talking about different sections of the website. And then I'll have the URL just so I know exactly what page that I'm working with. And then I created the next one is my page title. And so now you can kind of see, like in the top picks, I can see what I created the other titles for. So this allows me to see all of my metadata in one place. So then I have this, and then I can copy and paste it into the site. And that is a manual process, but now I have it all in one place. If I want to make changes, if I want to know the history of it, I can see what I used to have versus what I've changed it to by striking out and creating new rows. Also came up with just the conditional formatting, so I know if my characters start to get too long. If you have too many characters in your page title or meta description, Google starts cutting them off, and also you're saying too much, you know. Yeah.
This file is just a Word.
Yeah, this is actually
It's an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's all this is. And so I have one of these for each site that I work on. A lot of times I'll just copy it and then use it to go on. So, but now I can see all of my information in one place. When I create it by hand, I have them grouped, so I can kind of say, all right, this is the formula that I want for these descriptions, these keywords. And then the formatting, I can start to see if the stuff starts to get too long. So does this sort of make sense? Or okay. So, but I really think, because you get stuff inside of Joomla or inside of CMS, you can't always get back to it. You don't know what the description is on one page versus another page. This allows me to have it in one place so I can reference, I can see it all right there, and then copy and paste it into the site.
Stephen, do you keep track anywhere in here on like where the actual rank is coming in, or where Google's ranking that at all?
No, not with this. I have some paid solutions that I use for that keep up with all the rankings. So I keep that somewhere else. This I usually just will use at the creation of a site or when I'm doing a big update. It also allows me to hire other people to help create this stuff, and then I can just they put the bulk of the work by doing it, and then I'll just sort of massage it or get it to the form that I want. I find it's much easier to edit something than create it from scratch. And you know, I'll research on all these, like what do other results that I'm competing with, what are they saying for their metadata? So some examples, and I can show this in the file as well, I have like all my competitors' metadata, you know, so I'm down to like specific key terms like Joomla hosting or coffee subscription or whatever you're going for. I look to see who's ranking well for there. What are they talking about, and how is, you know, what are they doing?
The count, you can probably cover this already.
Oh, yeah.
You have 2 columns that say count.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have done a better job with that. Google, and I keep saying Google, but it's all the search engines. They don't want things to be too long, so they kind of will cap things at the number of characters. So generally, you don't want your page title to be more than 60 or so characters, including spaces. So with the count, I can now real easily, since this isn't a standard space font, you can't tell by just reading it, because you had a whole bunch of eyes, it would be shorter. This lets me see exactly how many characters I'm at. And it just kind of makes, so if I know if I'm going too much, and I know when I started doing this quite a few while, I tried to push it all the way to as much as I can. Now I just really focus on what's the good user experience. Like, I could have about Joomla hosting reviews. I don't really need to add much more to that page. That kind of says it all. I might could throw the word hosting on there a couple times. About Joomla hosting reviews, we're Joomla hosts, or whatever. You know, like that really doesn't help the end user. So this would be an example of where just the...
WordPress is a great plugin for SEO. Yoast
Yeah,
gives you the score based on page factors.
Yeah.
Is there anything similar to that in Joomla?
Not that I'm aware of. And I've worked with for the WordPress stuff I use, Yoast has, I use Yoast on WordPress, and it works really well. I'm not aware of anything like that inside of Joomla right now, but it would be helpful just so you can kind of see it all in one place.
It's hard to override the article editor in Joomla. Hard, but it's not, well, it's not super easy. In WordPress, it's really easy to insert that Yoast box, SEO box they have, and put in your factors and have it almost like in an Ajax fashion update whether or not you're getting 5 out of 5 factors.
Yeah.
But they still have keywords in there. Well, there's some things that are maybe antiquated, but it's a nice, it looks great because it's right when you're working on your content.
Yeah, so with the keyword density, things
Right.
like that.
We've been looking at that for Joomla, so we have some kind of prototype type stuff, but the problem is overriding that view so you don't break the article editing experience too hard, or do something that's going to get busted if you upgrade Joomla. That's where we're struggling right now, because we think that's a killer feature actually.
Yeah, it's pretty slick, and it's a great extension for WordPress.
Yeah, I have a website that's been running for about 10 years. Didn't do anything specific about SEO, but it ranks very high. And we're switching the whole thing over to a brand new responsive Joomla 3 site.
Okay.
Would going through something like this be a good way
Yeah.
to take all of our existing stuff? And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you really don't want to
the new one
change.
looks like the old one?
Yeah, you want to, if you can at all possible, keep the same URL structure, or at least on the pages that, you know, the 20% of the pages. Keep up with those, put them in a spreadsheet. I have some of these, like when I've migrated from 1.5 to 2.5, and the URL changed, I know what the old URL was, what the new one, so I can have it all in one place. And yeah, I would absolutely do that. And then also, if you got the metadata off of those pages, URL, having that address is really important, is the most important, and then the metadata would be the second. But yeah, absolutely. And in fact, when I take over a new site, and I'm going to make big wholesale changes, I'll grab a copy of what their index looks like really well. If you're on Mac, there's a great application called Integrity. And then I just found out they have a paid version called Scrutiny, which tells you even more information, which I didn't know existed until I was starting to put this together. And so now I love that. I'm running that on all my sites. It gives you a good index of everything that's going on. So anyway, so the metadata, this is manual, it takes time, but you get a really good control of everything that's going on versus something that's just going to scan the first 50 words of your site and create the metadata. So I just learned over time it's worth feeling the pain and putting it together. The next big thing is the page content. So really the first two items we address, only the search engines see. Humans don't really see any of that, but just the search engines do. Humans do see it in the search engine results, but they don't read it on any of your pages. So the next one is our page content, and this is your keywords, the content, how you format it with heading tags, bold tags, and then images. There's a lot of people who talk with keyword density, and it's important. Let's see, with keyword density, I don't really worry about is it 3% or 5%. I don't really try to hit any of those marks. I just make sure that I have the keywords on the page. Because like that one keyword example where you had the word white in there so many times, that wasn't useful to anyone. But when I do look at people's sites, this happens more often than it should. A lot of times people say, oh, I want to rank mine for web services. So they'll have their web services page, but they won't ever actually use that phrase web services in the content. And so that's really one of the biggest things. If you know the words you want to rank for, try to get them in, well, you have to get them in the copy, and then try to get them sort of at the start of the copy, you know. And but don't go crazy with it or feel like you have to stuff these words in there a whole bunch of times, because you can overload it and then it looks like it's unnatural is what it is.
Custom HTML, if you're writing an article type, I mean, is that searched by Google just like an article would be?
Yeah. Yeah, Google just sees just all the HTML pages.
Yeah.
And so sort of going along with the copy is the content. It needs to be descriptive, easy to read. This kind of borders on some of the human usability of it. It needs to just be clean and concise. You know, depending if it's not just a pure sales page, you know, you want to get a fair number of words on there so it's good and it talks all about one subject, you know. And then with the text formatting, the heading tags are good for search engine results, but they're also good for web screen readers. You know, not one of these factors is going to get you up to the top, but a lot of it just really goes to help you creating good web pages. And then with images, you want to use descriptive file names and alt tags. It's important to have that kind of stuff, but it's not the image tag. It's not the end all to be all. But you know, these are all just little elements. And the best thing that I found with Joomla for working with all of these is the JCE text editor. Have most people worked with this editor? Yeah. Okay. And you know, when I build sites now, like I'll use the headings. So I'll have my standard styled headings, and I'll try to say, all right, on each page I'm going to have H1 for sure, a heading tag for one. And then my H2s, and I'll style them so that way people can scan the page, and I don't have to create a new heading look for each individual page. I can just come in here to JCE, do a drop down, and then know I'm going to have a consistent look from page to page. With the image tags, you can get all those image dimensions in, the alt tags, you know, so I don't know, there's much more to say about it than this is just really the best way to go for getting that in. Yeah.
Are the search engines still looking kind of from top to bottom that they want more keywords at the top of the page, or don't they care as much anymore?
I don't know if they care as much, but it's still good. It's still good to have your most important words first, because that's really what the page is about, you know. I also believe that, you know, Google knows when you're at the result page, you click on something, you go to a site, and then if you immediately come back to the results, then they have to be tracking that, you know, there are a lot of people that go to this page and don't ever really come back, so you haven't created a good page. So I would get, you know, I'm creating a page about wooden doors, and you spend the whole time at the top talking about how you're great service, but you haven't talked about the wooden doors until the bottom. You know, people are there looking for wooden doors and not looking to learn about how good you are at installing them or whatever it is. So. Yeah.
On your homepage, it can be a problem, especially kind of the modern design these days, to have a nice big image and very minimalistic almost, if you will. And then a lot of the responsive design sites look like that. Oh, here's a really great image, and that's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think there is some evidence that Google looks for keywords that are above the fold. On an article, unless you have a giant image at the top of your article, usually you've got some text, so it's not so bad. The homepage can be a tricky part. So I would say find your most common screen size for your audience and make sure you've got a keyword and a couple important keywords above the fold, whether they're in the menu or something like that, not as images but as text.
Yeah.
Outside the homepage, it's probably less important, but I think with the way design has gone the last 2-3 years, that's maybe affecting people a little bit.
Well, that actually that brings a question with that.
Sites typically have a huge image and text usually is below.
That's what I'm saying.
So it could be at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
I think it's minor, but it's just a consideration. So we had a client the other day, and we had a big header, and so it was like, let's narrow it a little to get, so the menu was below this big header. We just got it so that the menu was a little, graphically was higher up on most screen sizes, so it was above the fold, just in case it was going to be an issue.
Yeah.
How do you get around the fact that you may have a homepage with a large header and then a lot of module positions below it, so you're not really even referencing sometimes an article, and then you try to get in there, it's very difficult to optimize that type of page with the theme. You almost have to pull it out of the art, the module positions to get it.
Yeah, the homepage is kind of a beast of its own, or its own type of entity. It's because it's got to do a lot of different things, and people love to argue and say, we need to have big images here, or no, we need copy or content. This would be one of the kind of cases where I default back to like, what is the site about? What's going to provide the best user experience, And so on my coffee site, I do have big, tall images at the beginning, but on those images it says coffee delivered monthly. So I have, those are the kind of what the coffee site's about. So that's how I found one way to work that into it. So it's still very visually pleasing, but it does have those 3 keywords.
But those are coming in text on the images. They're not coming in the image.
Yeah, so I could have, I'm sorry?
The alt text of the image? Or
No, just
text over
the text links.
Okay.
But you can also put keywords in your file names and keywords in your alt tags.
That's probably where alt tags and image description comes in.
Yeah.
There's no H1 tags or anything in there, but I'm assuming it factors in somehow.
Yeah.
With Joomla, can't you put metadata information in each article?
Oh yeah. You still have all that, the metadata and all that. We're just talking about what's physically on the page that the humans see, your visitors see.
So right, but he was arguing or discussing about how large images would give you a disadvantage. But the homepage.
It's just like, what are you trying to, if you're just trying to sell just one product, and you're buying all your traffic, then it's a lot of trade-offs. And this is where I just kind of come back to like, what's the best user experience? That's what I let sort of trump everything.
Let's not get away from the idea that the title of the page is going to be so much more important than whether or not your menu is above the fold. We're talking about you've optimized everything and you just want to do as much as you possibly can. You might continue to do that, but I don't want to interrupt you, Steve. It should not be your biggest concern.
Yeah. Getting great URLs, I say, is the biggest, or one of the first things to do. Quality metadata where it's unique to each individual page and reads well and makes sense is the next one. Page content is important. The next one is we have the internal and outgoing links. And these are links that are on your site as opposed to people linking incoming to you. With internal links, it's really good to, say if you do have, like my coffee site, I link my coffee subscription back to that subscription page so that 1, it'll bring visitors to that page, but then 2, also Google, the more times they see coffee subscription in the anchor text, they'll say, oh, that page is probably about coffee subscription. So do that. And then again, you want good user experience. Don't say, oh, I need to have coffee subscription linked 3 times on every single page. You can do that, and there's ways to automate it, but it doesn't always necessarily feel natural. sometimes can feel kind of junky. And then outgoing pages, even though these are links from your website to other people, there's still evidence that that's taken into search rankings. So, you know, if you aren't linking to other good resources, then you aren't really being a good web citizen or just helping people find the good information. So you want to, on all my sites, if I'll link to other people that are talking about the same subject that I am, if it's a good quality site. If there's a resource out there, a lot of times we'll put other resources, and I'll link to third parties, and if I have multiple sites in the same niche, then I'll link to my other sites mixed in with those. So, but it's just good to help people find other good information. And then on the same thing, you don't want to link to bad sites. And so you don't want to link to spammy or junky sites, because then it's kind of questionable. Like, if you have a really great site, why are you linking to all these Viagra sites or whatever? You know, it just doesn't make sense. And a lot of times, it's a little bit off topic, but you know, we get a lot of calls for sites that have been hacked into, and people say, well, I don't have anything to steal. I don't have any credit cards. There's no user information. What they're stealing is your credibility. And so you will see links, and they'll try to, the good ones will try to hide it, so you don't even know you're linking to these other sites. And that's what they're trying to do, is just take your credibility. So it does hurt you, or there's evidence that, you know, it's not good to link to bad sites if you don't have to. So the next element that we have are sitemaps. And this is just a little, I don't know the best way to describe it. It's just all sites have it so you can see all the pages at once. Sort of similar to that metadata example. I can see all my stuff at once. And you have two versions of these, essentially. You have an HTML sitemap, which humans can read, present to them. The second one is an XML sitemap, which generally other websites and search engines, you'll submit that to them, or they'll pick up on it. And so they'll come back and they'll crawl, they'll see your sitemap and say, oh, these are all the pages on your site. Generally, the search engines are pretty good. They don't really need these, but they are helpful. Especially if you have just a 5, 10, 20 page, Google's going to be able to pick up all your pages pretty easily. Now, if you have a 500 or 5,000, or you're having some difficulty getting some of your areas indexed by the search engines, then you can create a sitemap for that. And so with those, you can submit it to Google. And again, this is in Webmaster Tools. You can see the number of links that you've submitted to them, and then if they have a record of it being in their index. So again, inside of Webmaster Tools, you can see a lot of really good things. There's some good sitemap extensions. There's JSitemap, XMap, and then EKS, which I'm not as familiar with. The one that I've worked with the most is XMap. They have plugins for K2, they have plugins for JReview. So any kind of extension, you can now get one single sitemap to rule them all, I suppose. You know, so it's nice just kind of having it all in one place. JSitemap, which I have not really worked with that much, it's a paid extension, but it had fantastic reviews. And so I think it's like $45. I don't know if that's per site or you just have it.
I was really impressed. I switched actually from XMap.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I was really impressed.
Okay.
And it does multilingual real well. And I don't know if XMap does that now, but at the time it did not very well.
Yeah, XMap has been kind of stale for a little bit. I mean, they've kept it up and it's always been with the current versions, but there's not, I don't see a whole lot of innovation. But I don't know, it's sitemap, so.
A sitemap allows you to, if you have an extension where it doesn't have a plugin, it allows you to create a custom query inside the extension.
Oh, wow.
To go pull out records, and that will basically like you're kind of creating a on-the-fly plugin.
Right.
Really great. I was impressed.
Okay.
Which one did you say you switched to?
JSitemap Pro, I think. Right?
That's what you're using currently?
Yeah, and XMap has been around since almost the beginning of Joomla.
So what's the pros and cons of EKS?
I'm actually not super familiar with that one. The ones that I looked at, is, like I said, we always use XMap. Sitemap looks like to be pretty strong, and then the EKS one, I just know that it's out there.
So is Sitemap per site or just a global license?
No, it's like most things.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you pay for it, and then you can install it on your sites. Of these two, Sitemap and then Xmap. And again, this is just one sort of small little element, but this is one more attention to detail because search has gotten so good that it's not often that you're actually at a site and say, I can't find this, I'm going to go look at the sitemap. You know, but you do want it there. It's just one more element that Joomla has. You can install extensions to help people get around your site, and mainly the search engines get around your site. So, and then the last one is kind of a whole world unto itself, is page load times. And these would kind of divide into some different categories. You have HTML compression, you have CSS compression, and JavaScript compression. And so you have all your code, and it generally looks like this. So you can kind of read this, document type, languages, it makes sense. I've got some commenting in there. You can see at one point I used Optimizely on this, and then I took it out because I figured out what I needed to know. And I can see that with HTML and CSS compression, it turns it into that, which makes no sense to people, but it has all the spaces taken out, all the commenting has been removed, and it's just nice and tight, and it's just what the computers and browsers want to read, so it'll load faster. The problem, yes?
The compression. Is it a program?
Yeah, there are some extensions for that. Let's see, I think we'll get to those in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. With the compression, you get faster load times, it removes unneeded code, and you'll get happier users. Some of the cons are it's trial and error because not everything will compress well. Some of the JavaScript that you have from some extension might not be the best written, and so when you compress it, it breaks. It's more trial and error, and a lot of times with the compression, it's how much work and extra effort does it take versus the benefits of it. So it is more work for your admins and people maintaining the website, but it does get pages loading faster.
Does it combine like all your JavaScript calls instead of being multiple into one?
It can, yeah.
And then can you compress and then uncompress?
Yeah, And there are quite a few extensions out there that'll do it. Some will do just CSS, some will do both of them combined, some of them will get HTML, and I don't know if there's really a one-size-fits-all for that. It's just different sites, and I've had to try different ones for those. And so I'm trying to think there's...
We've used script merge.
Oh yeah,
The JavaScript and the CSS, you can turn it on and off, and you can exclude things. I don't think it does anything with HTML.
No, and that's a little bit more. Yeah, well, I've used script merge quite a bit.
You had to play with it a lot, though.
Yeah.
Right? You kept breaking things and it would cache.
Compared to trial and error.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, like start with the URLs, start with the metadata. Those are your biggest hits that are going to really get you the most bang for your buck. Now you're spending a lot of time and effort, but you can get your pages faster. Another way to get your pages faster is site caching. With that, Joomla does have its core cache. There are cache extensions, like Jot Cache is kind of, I think, the big one right now. And then there's a great one, Cache Cleaner, which just makes your life easier. To enable the Joomla core cache, you go into the global configuration, to the systems page, and then the cache settings, and you can turn things on and off. You have different levels of caching. Again, here it's going to be trial and error. And with the page caching, a visitor, I guess I should probably explain what it is. A visitor comes to your website, makes a request, the index.php starts assembling it from the database, puts all that stuff together, and then serves the page out. So it took a lot of work to get that page to the end user. Now the second person comes along, they have to do all the same thing again. With the site cache, the first person assembles the page, and then your server keeps a copy of that page the exact same way it was called the first time. So when person 2, 3, 4, 5 comes along, they're just viewing that assembled page for you. Now, trouble comes in when you have users logged in, because my cache page would be different than the next person's cache page, because I have my username and password. But that's essentially what the cache does. Joomla gives you a core cache, which is helpful. Jot cache is free and gives you a lot more control. You can see your individual pages. You can say exclude this from the cache. So a lot of times for like my form components, I'll exclude those from cache because those have more JavaScript, since people actually have to fill in and submit things. So turning on the cache is good. And then cache cleaner, when you do have the cache, this just shows up in the back end. You can click this little button and it just clears your cache, because as soon as you turn it on and you start working on a site and you go say, oh, I made this change, but it's not showing them on the front end, like what's going on? It's because the cache got you, and it will happen. So cache cleaner is fantastic. You just click on it. You can even set every time a page is saved that it'll clean the cache for you.
So none of these involve cookies on the viewer's computers?
No, this is all server-side type stuff. And there's a whole world of browser caching and time that gets pretty involved. I've gone down that rabbit hole too. But the biggest thing, I would first do your page, your Joomla caching, and make sure that it works. You want to spot check it, and then the CSS compression, that kind of stuff. But we're getting to the real small parts. Yeah.
SiteGround has a lot of caching abilities. There's something called Super Cacher.
Yeah.
We actually don't use that. We just use mod page speed, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
You can just one-click install that, but you can put mod page speed on any server, basically any Unix server. So we found that has given us the biggest increase.
Yeah.
This mod page speed, is this an extension? Or?
Yeah, it's an Apache plugin. Or PHP extension, one or the other.
Yeah. So this would be for on the server side, not inside of Joomla.
On SiteGround, it's just you click a button in your control panel, but if you don't have SiteGround, then you can just install it yourself. Then you probably play more with it.
Is it suitable for sites of every size?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then kind of leading directly into hosting, server speed and a good host does matter. It makes a difference. It's just from the end user point of view and everything else, faster pages are good. Another thing that really helps is get an uptime monitor like Pingdom, because I usually just say it helps keep the host honest. So you'll know when your site goes down, if it's fast or slow, and if you feel like there's a problem, when you now have a record and a history of how fast your page has gone. And then I also really like just going with a Joomla Fluent host. SiteGround, like Victor mentioned, is a great one. Cloud Access is another strong one. Rockin' Hosting. These are all people that are ingrained into the Joomla community and familiar. And honestly, sometimes I know new releases of Joomla have come out because SiteGround emails me. And so I get it first from them before another tweet or whatever. So really go with, I like the Joomla Fluent hosts real well. So then the last element is you can do a content delivery network. And this is kind of a whole other world itself. But it takes all of your images and static elements and puts them all around the world. So you can see, this is how the big sites do it. So if you are in India or Europe, you're going to pull the images from this location. If you're in the USA, you're going to pull parts of your site from the servers closest to you. And there's several extensions for those. One is CDN for Joomla from No Number, which works really well. Jom CDN, and then Cloudflare is another one. This is also a paid third-party service. There might be some free ones out there, but you're going to get what you pay for on that. And you can probably spend anywhere from $50, maybe $150 a year to $2,000 a month, depending on it. But these will help you speed up your site, and Joomla has some good extensions for those. And so that's pretty much your on-page factors. We're at the end right now. real quick, the off-page stuff, you have all your incoming links, how trustworthy is your site, the location, you know, if it's an English site and it's located in China, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So an English site where the server is physically located in England is going to do better. And then personalization, you know, what kind of results does Google get back, you know, based on your search history and them tracking you. So that's it. So yeah.
On Cloudflare, one of the CDNs, is it beneficial if you do not have any foreign users?
Not as much. Maybe some, because it'll help balance it across the U.S. But you know, your user base does have a factor. Yeah.
So it's not just that load balancing in the U.S. takes requests away from your server. If your server serving your site is going to run faster and be able to handle more load because we're taking the static assets from, say, Amazon servers or whatever. So that definitely helps. That's what helps page speed, which helps your ranking. So that's good. But Cloudflare in particular has a bunch of security stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, when the CDN is where the static content
Right, yeah.
is distributed around the country or
Correct.
around the world, where it would be quicker to access that because they're closer to.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's kind of physical.
Now, when you say extensions, are those extensions will provide that functionality, or do you have to have some kind of deal with?
It's after, so we'll go and wrap it up. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But yeah, you're right. You still have to pay for the third-party service, but it helps you add it to your site real easily.
You have to have an extension and then a service.
Correct.
This slide's available.
Yeah. So hopefully you guys found this helpful, and if you have any questions or whatever, I've just learned this through trial and error. So.